Sonic the Sunday strips. The Robotnik ones. They actually updated Eggman's look in later Sunday strips to be the Robotnik one. So the Sega mandate applied to these ones too. Not surprised, because a villain looking like Robotnik being the constant victim of slapstick on Sonic's part and failing every single time, and going up against Sonic himself, feels confused in its tone when he's got evil black and red eyes. Not to mention he even said that he's meaner than ever. That's not a nitpick, because character designers do have to consider how their audience will react to their character design. And since the AOSTH design is a bit different from the SATM one, why did they have to keep the black and red eyes when it changed other things about him, like giving him a pointy head? It proves that they didn't have to have the exact same design as the SATM one for every single one. Anyways, after Sonic beats some badniks as usual, Eggman says that he plans on shrinking Sonic, a plot that's always relegated to comedic stories since science has marched on enough to know how unscientific that would be. Sonic sees Eggman laughing for some reason, and calls him Old Eggy. See, if they're gonna continue with the egg nicknames, and Eggman's even gonna continue making egg puns, then they're just begging me to keep calling him Eggman. Plus, Eggman's got less syllables than the name Robotnik has, and it's the default name to me. Anyways, Sonic snarks that maybe Eggman's finally cracked because he's laughing for no reason. Not to mention laughing really stupidly. This line's ironic, considering eventually he really did crack for a while. For some reason, Sonic's next action isn't to spin dash at Eggman right away and beat him up so he could eventually arrest him in a wagon. But instead, Eggman talks to himself about his shrinking machine while Sonic's not there. He brags that with Sonic out of the way, he can take complete control of Mobius. I guess he means that he doesn't consider himself to be ruling all of the world because at least Emerald Village is being protected, not to mention Angel Island. Sonic gets hit with a shrink ray because he wasted time complaining about name calling instead of immediately going to jump on Eggman's head like always. It would have at least made Eggman look smart if he had interrupted him, and that's why he hit him. But not even that is true. It would have made more sense if Eggman had ambushed Sonic with the ray when Sonic didn't know he was there. After Sonic's really stilted lame line, Eggman taunts Sonic asking, "What are you, some kind of blue mouse?" And for some reason Sonic calls him Mr. Giant Robotnik. I guess sarcastically, since it wouldn't be like him to be polite to him unironically. However, he can still spin attack at Eggman's leg. But despite him looking in pain, he ends up telling Sonic that he couldn't feel a thing. So he was scared for nothing. So he wasn't really in pain then. Eggman somehow still expects himself to be able to beat Sonic by crushing him when Sonic has super speed. So really, Sonic has no reason not to just run away from him and get Porker to make a shrink ray to unshrink him. Really, if size-shifting rays can even be made in this universe, there'd be no reason for him not to already have one made. Because it'd make picking up and transporting big objects way easier. But I guess they'd be made out of hard-to-get or expensive materials. And they'd be so hard to make that you can't have them be super common everywhere. It's just that they'd make putting stuff into moving trucks so much easier. I love how amusing Robotnik looks trying to crush Sonic with his foot. Unsurprisingly, Sonic just runs away. He actually leads Eggman to run to a palm tree and get coconuts landing on his head. And then he gets stuck in a spider web and gets threatened by a spider. Because that's not a cliche. Can't he just be threatened by literally any other bug that's dangerous to him? I think a centipede would be more interesting. Sonic somehow manages to curl up into a ball and spin around to cut through the web even though he's stuck to it and wouldn't be able to spin at all. Because these newspaper strips will do absolutely anything to not have Sonic's friends do something useful for him, or even appear at all. I wouldn't be surprised if Tails never even showed up. So the spider gets knocked out by Sonic, and then Sonic nearly gets blasted by fire from a buzz bomber. At least that's karma against him in a meta sense for getting an overly easy victory, because he immediately gets humiliated. Sonic jumps to avoid the fire shot by the buzz bomber, and Eggman fails to catch him when he jumps up to him, as a natural consequence of him being too small for him. There's genuine tension as Sonic's about to fall into the big, fanged mouth of some fish badniks, which look way more menacing than chompers because they're gray-colored, like miniature shark piranhas. Wait, since they're badniks and not just robots, Logically, wouldn't Sonic become its organic battery right away? Wouldn't they have more of an incentive to keep Sonic alive to badnikify him than outright kill him with their teeth? No, because if the badniks weren't made to kill Sonic, they wouldn't have been made so lethal with their attacks. Sonic, despite clearly being headed for its mouth when he was falling towards it, magically ended up falling and bouncing off its head and hitting the other one's head. And sure, he's complaining they didn't destroy them, so at least he has some challenge, but come on. He badnik bounces back onto the wood bridge, and then Eggman's weight collapses the bridge. I don't think it would have done that. Isn't Eggman like 280 pounds? That bridge would have been collapsed a while ago then. That's one poorly made bridge. It would have made more sense if a stray fireball sent from a buzz bomber had burned away the bridge on Eggman as a Chekhov's gun. Later on, Sonic, who's still shrunken, dodges a coconut thrown by a coconut's badnik, a whole bunch of them in fact, and Eggman's foot ends up being hit with one as well, and he also gets hit in the head. Yeah, this is why Eggman normally doesn't go after Sonic himself. At least that's one thing most iterations of Eggman are smart about, because they don't risk themselves like this. He even gets hit by one again, and at least he passes out to be realistic. Wait, did Robotnik start sobbing? And did he just apologize? Well, maybe he's just lying to manipulate him because he does beg Sonic to let him go. As it turns out, Sonic thought to have him pinned down with a bunch of ropes. Sonic says he'll only let him go if he unshrinks him. He better not hold up his end of the bargain. He's told the shrink ray's behind those trees. I hate that he keeps calling it a miniaturization ray. It's an overly long, complicated title in comparison, and it's not even easy to spell. Eggman says that he's been fooled, and the ropes holding him down were the smallest and weakest on Mobius. So that at least explains how he got freed properly. But where does Sonic get that rope? How would he have access to rope small enough for him to pin him down with pins? Sure, it was convenient that he had that rope lying around at his house, off screen. Sonic hits the button and shrinks Eggman, and jumps at his head. If only Sonic could destroy the shrink ray after bringing himself back to normal. That would make Eggman basically harmless from now on. At least the Deus Ex Machinas in these strips make the writing not nearly as predictable as the actual comic. You don't know exactly what will happen next. He jumps at Eggman's head, Eggman runs straight into a star pose, and he returns himself to normal. I like that he said that he set the shrink ray machine on automatic, and of course Eggman had to put the ray on a timer feature just in case he got shrunken. Then Eggman's faced with a normal-sized Sonic when he's shrunken. If Sonic wasn't against killing, Eggman would be taken down right here. Either way, he should have absolutely no chance of not being grabbed and put in a prison forever by this point. Sonic stomps, no, not on Robotnik, but on the ground instead. Oh, finally picks him up, and by the back of his shirt. Too bad he's a complete drooling idiot, because he says that, oh wait, Sonic's actually a giant? I thought he was returned to normal size. So Sonic has to keep Eggman around to get back to normal, or he could just have Porker make a shrink ray. But Porker wouldn't know how to make one right away, so we'd have to wait a while longer. And how would he go to the bathroom that way, with the toilets being all normal sized? I'm just trying to make sense of this. Eggman begs him to make him normal size, and Sonic says he can get distorted at Mach velocities if Eggman totally destroys the shrink ray, or else he'll stay small forever. Why would destroying the machine that Eggman and Sonic need to return to normal size be considered a good idea by either of them? If he's too big to really bring him to prison and tie him up, really he should be killing him at this point. Also, why doesn't Sonic destroy the machine? Wouldn't he be way better at that? I hate when they have stories where Eggman's in a position where he logically would have been taken down for good, but of course he's not, and there's no good excuse for it. This was the first time I really got angry at these strips. For the most part, they're great. Eggman says he'll make his machine explode. Don't know how Sonic expects that to happen, or why he would ever trust him to keep his word. Sonic somehow decides that returning Eggman to normal size would be a good idea. Eggman somehow does keep his word, which is a giant out-of-character moment for him in the vast majority of the franchise, and explodes his machine even though he's crying about it. Also, Sonic's somehow back to normal size because they thought that should be kept off-screen. So how did Sonic get returned to normal size? How would he have a giant shadow over Eggman if he wasn't a giant? That was a confusing end to the story. Sonic should have just destroyed the device himself. I think him being giant would be a small price to pay for keeping Eggman harmless forever. But no, so much for being selfless like a real hero would. Later in Hilltop Zone, after Sonic generically gets rings and Badnik bounces, Eggman sends fireballs at his Badniks for failing him, though at least they do look original. Then after a brief time skip, Eggman completes a Badnik booster rocket, and I like that they at least tried to explain that the rockets are powered by something. They're powered by Eggo gas, which is a fuel somehow made from the fumes of rotten eggs. The writer wasn't even trying to make sense with that. Eggman plans to transform Badniks into really fast Super Badniks. And his constant egg puns were a problem here because since the word eggs wasn't bold, at first I kept reading it as he wants to simply turn them into eggs. Which sounds silly but would be much darker since there's people in those Badniks. Sonic psychically knows he's heading for trouble somehow. They waste a lot of panels until finally Eggman sends the fast Badniks to Sonic. Since there's only so much room in this page, and the Sunday strips were like one page at a time, it's pretty bad to have almost a whole page of nothing happening. He should have cut to sending him to Sonic pretty quickly. Sonic somehow doesn't instantly go to attack the Badniks, and instead stands there like an idiot for a couple panels, being allowed to yammer on with no consequences. He gets hit by a cone launched at his head and narrowly avoids some fire, and then runs away like a coward. Not once trying to fight the Badniks just because Eggman told them they were fast. If they were really fast, they would have tried to attack him in the first panel. Sonic narrowly avoids a Badnik flying after him, and it flies into a tree. Then a burning tree starts heading Sonic's way, but there's probably no reason he can't just avoid it, so why does Eggman think he'd get defeated from this? It's not like Sonic's completely surrounded by inescapable fire. And even then, he could just spin dash underground. He tries to take advantage of the moving platforms from Hilltop Zone, but immediately gets destroyed by Badnik. At least the trees of Hilltop Zone were taken advantage of too. I like it when the setting of the story actually matters for the plot. We're expected to believe Sonic's falling towards lava, but it clearly just looks like water with little beads of orange juice in it. He falls towards a Super Badnik heading towards him. His dialogue's so weird sometimes because they try to make him use outdated slang all the time. Like, cheesed it. But at least they're always trying to make it as informal and entertaining as it should be. He could be a lot more boring. He grabs onto the Badnik as he's falling and starts riding it, which I'm sure some fans wish they could have done at some point. But soon it explodes because Sonic rides it into a wall. Fortunately, he manages to hitch a ride on a booster rocket they used to power the Badnik, and he flies around with it just as fast as the robots and kicks one of the Orbonauts. Wait, that's how it's spelled? I thought it was just Orbonaut. Anyways, he starts flying towards one of the Badniks, and he predictably jumps away to make the Badniks collide. He grabs the edge of the Eggomatic as it's falling, and a stray rocket starts heading for them. It crashes into it, and Sonic jumps off and grabs a treetop while the Eggomatic crashes, and since Eggman's unconscious, Sonic grabs the Super Badnik remote control, and some Badniks are heading towards him as he wonders how it works. Why is Sonic smiling during this tense situation? Sure, it's nice of the Badniks to fly slowly towards him so he'd have the time to say all this while doing nothing. He presses a button to make the Badniks turn away, and then I'm really confused when suddenly there's a Badnik still here to threaten Eggman, and Eggman gets covered in rockets and knocked out. Wouldn't that remote control all of them at once? Wouldn't it make more sense for there to simply be a self-destruct switch? And Sonic says there's still rockets intact, so Eggman's in for a shock when he wakes up. Sonic knocks on the Eggomatic to wake him up, and tells him to check it out with a genuine smile and says he's given his machine some extra power. Making me think about when Scourge tried to team up with Robotnik, and make me really wish we got to see a whole arc of him working for Robotnik, and seeing that he was wrong to do so by the end. But no, that opportunity was always wasted. Somehow they thought that would be a good idea. And we see the rockets on the bottom of the Eggomatic, and Sonic sends him blasting away, and says that Eggman's sure to fall back to Mobius eventually. Yeah, that totally makes sense to not kill him. You know, from him being sent into space, or falling from space. At least this explains why Eggman decided to never use rocket-powered Badniks against Sonic again, since he's sobbing because of his failure by the end. But shouldn't the common sense solution be to send them against Sonic without him being there? He should really just send a flying camera to Sonic, instead of risking his life being physically present. In the next story, Sonic finds no rings in Emerald Hill Zone, and somehow, even though Eggman snuck up behind him while being smart enough not to reveal himself with speaking, Sonic still knew to dodge his wrecking ball anyways. Eggman reveals that he hit all the rings, somehow not absorbing them into his aura just from touching them. Wouldn't it make more sense for him to just absorb them into himself? But if he got hit, Sonic would get some from him anyways, so... I guess he used cranes to pick all of them up. It was smart of him to not tell Sonic where he hit them. But without any rings, there's 3 ways this story could go. Either Eggman will miraculously miss all of his attacks against Sonic. None of them will be feasibly enough to injure him, or the story will make no sense as Sonic will have no reason to not be injured or killed by all that slapstick. So this is a risky move. Then a lot of panels are wasted before finally Sonic gets threatened by Badniks. He falls towards them. There's a smoke cloud for no apparent reason, as of course Sonic beat the robots, and he runs towards some Badniks with bombs in their hands hiding in the bushes. Sure was convenient for Eggman that he happened to run in that direction. Oh, they weren't in bushes, they were in trees, because fuck originality. So Sonic avoids the bombs no problem, which destroys the trees they were in. And then Sonic gets grabbed by a flying giant pink bird Badnik. Sonic gets threatened with a wrecking ball while being held still, though his force-tilted dialogue dumbs down the tension as there's no way he'd make this joke here. Somehow, Sonic magically avoided getting hit by the ball off screen, and Eggman merely destroys the Badnik. Sonic grabs onto the chain of the wrecking ball. Well, at least that's new. Wait, if Eggman has a camera that can show him Sonic right below his Eggomatic, then why doesn't he just fly really high above him every time he tries to kill him? He'd be able to see his demise just fine without putting himself in danger all the time. Eggman then pulls a lever to drop the wrecking ball, which I guess was an option to him for a surprise attack. Later on, after I guess Sonic jumped off the wrecking ball, Sonic avoids a laser, and then for no reason a Buzz Bomber supposed to be loyal to him bumps into his Eggomatic and he drops the telescope, and ends up flying in the way of his own laser and getting the vehicle damaged by it. So he has to fly back to the base for repairs, and Sonic resurfaces from the water he was hiding under just as an octopus Badnik sneaks up on him. Sonic explains that the reason Eggman was fooled into thinking he beat Sonic was that Sonic took off his shoes. He gets grabbed around the chest by the octopus Badnik, and somehow he manages to do a quick spin to free himself, even though he's got a tentacle wrapped around his chest, which should completely restrain him from spinning. And somehow he tied up all of its tentacles around each other. And somehow Eggman's still around even though he was on his way back home last page. So he has no reason to be close enough to Sonic to know he's alive and try to shoot fire at him. This was the worst written page of all. Sonic jumps into the water and the Eggomatic actually flies into the water. What was Eggman thinking? So not only can his flamethrower not work underwater, but his engine compartment floods. He swims away from it as it sinks, and Sonic suddenly notices that one of the missing rings is at the bottom of the lake and stuck onto something. Really? All the rings wouldn't be hidden in one place? Well, that is more smart of Eggman just in case. It goes to show you how great these strips are that I'm still not missing Sonic's friends, and I'm still just as engaged and interested in the stories. They still haven't gotten stale or formulaic at this point. I love that they're focusing mostly on things happening instead of just dialogue going on, which is what would be happening if there were characters in the story that weren't actually doing anything in it. There is some merit in keeping things simple. It's just that in the games, the vast majority of them have the exact same story. The Monster of the Week formula, and the 2D Sonic game formula, with the 2D games barely qualifying as having a story, aside from the Rush games. So it'd be horribly boring if the games just stuck to 2 characters, because they wouldn't ever have plots like this. It'd just be Sonic fighting the Eggmobile every time. There's some tension as the robot's trying to attack Sonic when he's trying to pull out the stuck ring, though really you'd think the ring would just immediately absorb into Sonic the second he touched it. Of course, he pulls it out in time, and oh, that's interesting. He puts the ring in the eelbot's mouth, and it tries to bite down on it, which makes it take off, and Sonic starts swimming towards a dark underwater cave. It was especially genre savvy of Eggman to hide the rings in a cave underwater. After all, water is Sonic's weakness. You'd think he'd put a force field generator around the rings though, to make grabbing them impossible. Lucky for Sonic, not only is there no force field around the rings, since Eggman didn't think ahead that much, but also the place with the rings piled up isn't underwater by itself. And I can only assume that this is a spare Eggomatic he's on. Sonic sets off a ring avalanche. Again, this is stupid. They just absorb into Eggman's aura. That just helped them. If rings were literally always solid objects, then Sonic would only be able to carry a few of them with him at any given time. Unless they literally shrank and he had a pocket to put them all in. But he doesn't have a pocket. Though that's not too bad of a change from the games. He doesn't have to collect hundreds of rings like he does in the games in actual story. No matter how many rings he'd have, if he still loses all of them when he gets hit, that's not good as an explanation for him taking tons of punishment. But my point is, most of the time we don't actually see Sonic having rings in his hand or in his arms to justify him surviving getting hurt. But him having rings is the only explanation. So that's why they really shouldn't be said to always be solid. It's confusing. And then out of nowhere, it turns out Eggman's Egg-O-Matic is overheating, and it's about to explode. Why? It's not like Eggman brought his old damaged Eggmobile all the way here. There's no hint of that. And it was underwater. And he doesn't have super strength. He runs out of the cave because apparently it also has an exit above water in a hill, and somehow Eggman survived the Eggmobile exploding so hard that it destroyed most of the hill. And lucky for Sonic, the rings not only survived the explosion as expected, but also scattered all over the zone for Sonic to collect, as opposed to just staying where they were. That was rude of them. In the next story, wait, really? They finally got a clue on Tails in a strip. Too bad it's a strip that's just 3 panels long. We started with the Eggmobile having smoke coming out of it, and he's flying away and it panicking. Tails snarkily asks how he ever got his flying license. Sonic says nothing will stop them from getting some rings now, and then out of nowhere it turns out that some white pillar toppled over, and some little pebble magically got flung to Sonic's head for no reason, I guess. And somehow went straight up afterwards. Huh? I'm not impressed. Why did they think reducing it to 3 panels was a good idea for the story? You get taken out of the story every 3 panels. That's tedious. And yet it ends on a cliffhanger instead of just being an off-panel joke with a punchline, which would make more sense for so few panels. Well, I do love that Tails' first line in this continuity was him snarking at Eggman behind his back. He's not a total idiot here. Then it turns out that according to the narration, Sonic's lost his memory. You don't lose your memory from getting hit in the head, typically. It's more like from getting a stroke. And even if you did, memory loss would be the least of your problems. So lazy plot device aside, Tails has to save Sonic from Eggman when he almost hits him with a Pico Pico hammer jutting off the bottom of his Eggmobile. I like that Tails got to save Sonic for once, but how could this take place right after the previous strip where Eggman's Eggmobile was too damaged to do this? It couldn't. So is Sonic knocked out for a really long time? Because if not, you'd think Sonic wouldn't need saving, and would have been able to get out of the way himself. Sonic has to stop running in front of a badnik and doesn't know what a spin attack is, so Tails has to teach him about it. I like that Tails is being useful by telling him stuff he doesn't know. It just really looks good compared to how he was portrayed in Fleetway early on. It's sad that he had a much stronger first impression in a much more obscure comic. Sonic breaks the badnik after it politely waits for them to finish talking about what a spin attack is without even trying to defeat them. Then Sonic bumps into Tails in midair over some water that's here out of nowhere just as some badniks fly at them. This amnesia plot helps make Sonic the most engaging as a character that he's been so far. He's more vulnerable for once, needing to rely on Tails to know what to do. But at this point I think he's learned everything he really needs to know, so the amnesia plot can't go anywhere from here. At least nowhere that would make sense, because he has no reason to ever think Eggman's good when he has evil black and red eyes. Every day's the same for Sonic, and all he needs to do is stay alive, which he could do just fine without his memory. So he's really not that disabled by his amnesia anymore. His life's too simple for that. Lucky for them, Eggman didn't bother to put waterproofing spray on the flying badniks, so they get destroyed from hitting the water just fine. But then Sonic's scared by a fish badnik since he's inexperienced now, and there's some tension since he forgot how to be brave, even though he just proved to himself that he could beat badniks just fine. It's sad that this is trapped in an obscure British magazine when this is the best handling of any Sonic gets amnesia plot ever, or any character gets amnesia plot in general. It's not really frustrating like in Archie, and it's not over in 2 seconds with nothing done with it like in Fleetway. But again, very polite of that badnik to just sit there and not try to bite Sonic, and all that time they're talking. Tails predictably saves him by jumping on its head, with Sonic calling him his hero in a heartwarming unique line, and Eggman shows up again, and somehow Tails thinks Sonic's gonna regret trying to spin attack at Eggman, even though that always works out well for him. He's just doing what he always does, but I'm sure it'll backfire on him this time just because plot. Sonic grabs onto the bottom of the Eggmobile and requests Tails' help, and Tails stupidly tells Eggman that Sonic's lost his memory, which is begging for him to take advantage of that. Eggman complains about being dive-bombed, and his Eggmobile starts heading for a brick wall. This causes the two of them to fall out of it, and Tails rescues Sonic while Eggman lands in the water and calls his base, telling his badniks to send a new Eggomatic to him. And a short while later, instead of the heroes going home in all that time, somehow they're in front of Eggman when he's got a spare Eggmobile with a wrecking ball, which is right over a river. Seriously, how did this happen? Did they just patiently wait right there for a spare Eggmobile to show up? He's not showing up at their house, which would just be begging for him to go destroy in the middle of the night because he'd know where Sonic lived. Tails assumes Eggman will win for some reason, instead of simply flying above the wrecking ball range and beating up Eggman easily. Then the wrecking ball hits and knocks over a pillar to make the other ones fall over like dominoes, so the heroes get away from them in a hurry. It bothered me that Sonic said Eggman missed when he clearly had to have hit that pillar on purpose, considering how far away he is from Sonic. Sonic didn't even have to dodge the wrecking ball. I really hate that the end of story text box tries to completely spoil an event in the next story. They should never do that with titles. They avoid his wrecking ball, but it gets stuck in the ground. Well, that's a really creative way for him to get stuck. It's better than mud doing it, or glue. And for no reason, Sonic decides it's safer to stay here, although I guess he means that he's safer not being in front of the fire jutting out of the Eggmobile in their tails. And some badniks stick up behind Sonic, as I wonder why Tails isn't going to fly up to Eggman and attack him directly. Because the Grounders snuck up on him, they all pick up Sonic and carry him away. So, I'm pretty sure he's hear the Grounders coming up behind him. Well, maybe not. They're going along grass, and it's not like they're stomping around with metal feet. Finally, Tails thinks to take advantage of his fight against the Eggmobile by flying up to him, and sadly doesn't constantly punch him after that, but he does push him out of it and take over the Eggmobile. That's pretty cool. If only Tails as your partner could do that in a game, but then every boss would be over way too easily. Then we see that Sonic's about to be thrown to his doom, though it doesn't do a good job with the art telling you that he'll be thrown off a cliff to fall a long way. Instead, it just looks like he'll be thrown towards the broken pillars and some sharp, big rocks, which the latter would be dangerous to land on, of course, but the pit doesn't look that deep from this camera angle. Sonic says, making me feel sorry for him, "I wish I could remember why these metal menaces don't like me." And Tails flies the Eggmobile straight into the robots to send Sonic away from them, because I guess their grip on him absolutely sucked, so he didn't just fall down with them. It was nice of Tails to apologize to Sonic for knocking him away. And for the final strip ever, of course Sonic gets his memory back from some badnik shrapnel hitting his head. There's no way that would restore his memory instead of making it worse. At least he jumps on Eggman's back for karma, and it's cute that Tails is still in the Eggmobile. I like how he has his arms up, he looks pretty cute. But wait, why does Tails know Sonic has his memory back already? Just because he called him Tails? There's no way he wouldn't have told him his name in all that time they were waiting for Eggman to get his spare Eggmobile. But yeah, this was a great series of comic strips. It's a shame they're all hidden away, but fortunately they're all on Tumblr now. Well, all but two of them. Tails had an awesome story when he finally did show up, and it was impressive how I was always interested in the stories when they're just Sonic and Eggman all the time. There was good variety and good tension in the stories as well, even if Sonic got some overly easy victories a few times. It's sad to say, these comic strips are probably the most consistently good continuity of Sonic there's ever been. The only time I really got mad was when Sonic was a giant and didn't take down Robotnik. We should have learned that Eggman was using rings too, because come on, how would he survive all that slapstick?